Hey everybody, it's 10 and 10 time. He's Tony George, I'm Scott Spreitzer, and we've got 10 games to talk to you about over the next 10 minutes or so. Before we get to all those games, a quick note, if you've yet to become a member over at DocSports.com, real cool way to give it a trial run. You click on the link below the video, get yourself set up for a free $60 account. You can use that on any of our daily packages over at DocSports.com. Tony's, mine, anybody else on the roster, and it comes with that DocSports.com guarantee. Get started by clicking on the link below the video. Let's get to it, man. A little Pac-12 action. Arizona State at Utah. The Utes laying 13.5, Tony. And listen, man, when Herm Edwards is coaching Arizona State, you can almost count on a close game. 14 times, the last 14 times that they've faced a Power 5 opponent, 12 of those 14 games have been decided by 7 points or less. Do you understand this line, 13.5? It is a revenge spot for Utah. In fact, one of the 2 times that they didn't play in a game decided by 7 or less, so they kicked the crap out of Utah last year, 38-20.
That's exactly right here. And you take a look at this total 48 and a half, yet there's 13 points involved, over almost 14 here. I'll tell you what, right now, the only way to look in this game, I know all about Utah's defense, Scott, but you know, ASU's got a little bit of defense of their own and a defensive-minded coach. And we've seen Utah hit and miss this year a little bit. I'll definitely be grabbing the points there with the Sun Devils.
Yeah, I think that line's a little bit too high.
Yeah, staying in the Pac-12. I want to say Pac-10.
Pac-8? I was going to say, let's really date ourselves. Go
I know,
Pac-8.
we're dating ourselves here. Oregon Ducks, quack, at Washington. The Huskies, disappointing this year, to say the least.
Yep.
Not getting the play out of the quarterback they thought they were going to get, not getting the play out of the running game they thought they were going to get, not getting the play out of the defense they thought they were going to get, and Oregon trucking along here. Last year, an overtime game with Oregon winning here. I think it'll be a tight game, 51.5 a total. Huskies catching 2.5 here. I think Oregon's a better team, but maybe, is this the game that the Huskies come out of their shell or not?
I don't know, man. I'll tell you what, if you are into betting this game and you like Oregon, don't, as Tony just said, you can find 2.5. So at least right now as we're cutting this video kind of early in the week, if you like Washington, you can find 3. This is one of those things where you can grade yourself as a bettor. If you like Oregon, you better not lay more than 2.5 if you're watching this early in the week. If you like Washington, you better not take less than 3. It's as simple as that. Listen, Oregon should have beaten Auburn. We know all about that. They mistaked their way into a loss. They were held to 21, 21, and 17 in 3 of their 6 games. It's a little scary for a program that we're used to getting up and down the field. They've been doing it more with defense. They're 8th against the pass, 23rd against the run. I'm filibustering because I don't have a play on this one right now.
Right.
I will say this, the Ducks 3-8 in their last 11 against the spread on the road. How about 12-3-1 against the spread the last 16 in this series?
Yeah, and one thing about it the Oregon want to make note of, anybody they played outside of a Power 5 conference, they tore them up.
Yeah.
Anybody inside of a Power 5 conference, they scored 21 or less.
Sure.
I mean, think about that a minute here. And of course, Washington's got something to prove here. That's going to be an interesting game. And now the upset special from last week.
Absolutely, SEC time. Florida laying 5.5 at South Carolina. Both teams off for loss. You know, I'm sitting there, I'm doing VSiN last week on Friday as we do. Brent Musburger comes over to me after I get off the air and he goes, he was getting ready to do a show. And he goes, who do we like this week? And I told him Reno, but do it now because they're laying 2.5. It could go to 3. They won by 3, just like we thought it would.
Yeah.
And then he goes, what do you think about this Florida LSU line at 13.5? I go, you know, Brent, it's exactly where I made it. Final score is a 14-point margin.
Right.
I didn't play the game. But here's the thing. I mean, it wasn't the game was much closer than that final score would indicate. It was a close battle for a good chunk of that football game. Carolina beat Georgia. But my gosh, Georgia shot themselves in the foot, or I guess we should say Bulldogs shot themselves in the paw. And they did it over and over because it got ugly. Georgia had 30 first downs to 16 for South Carolina, outgained Carolina by about 200 yards, but they had 4 turnovers to 0 turnovers for the Gamecocks. So I think the Gamecocks bounce back to earth this week. Kind of like Florida here, -5.5, -6.
Yeah, and Mullen, as visiting Chalk in the SEC, only 4 times. He's covered all 4, and you got to worry about the health and the availability of South Carolina's quarterback, Kalinsky, this week. Yeah, so that's a big issue. You're going to want to check on this one. Right now, the points look a little bit tasty in terms of laying and not taking in
fact,
this
you know
one.
what? I almost forgot to mention. That is my best bet this week here on the 10 and 10 is the Florida Gators. minus the points over South Carolina. We just have to make sure that the Florida Gators aren't discombobulated between the years after losing their first game of the season. I think they win this game by 10-14.
Unintentionally stole my thunder. I'm on the same game for free play, but I like the under.
Oh, okay.
I like the under 48 in this.
Sure.
I don't see South Carolina scoring a lot of points without their starting quarterback, even with their starting quarterback. And as you mentioned, it's very difficult to take a team the following week, even if they're catching points, off a huge upset like
This
that.
time of season, especially.
And Florida played one of the best teams in the country and just came up short last week.
Right.
And the scoreboard wasn't indicative of that. And trust me, the Gamecocks have nowhere near the offense that what LSU does.
How about a 20-3 final? Can you
There we
do
go.
that? All right,
20-3 final. There we go, folks. So we got the under and we got the favorite. Yeah, there you go. Speaking of good games, here's a good game this weekend. We're switching gears to the Big 12. And Baylor remains undefeated. I don't know how. They needed a miracle to beat Iowa State a couple weeks ago in a game where they blew a 20-point lead, ended up kicking one with like 7 seconds left to win by 1.
Sure.
Then they got Texas Tech in overtime with the backup quarterback. They snuck away from that. They did look good against Kansas State, but I think maybe they might meet their match here, Scott. Oklahoma State Cowboys at home laying 3.5. They're expecting some points here, 64.5 total.
Well, I'll tell you what, as far as Oklahoma State, it's not quite the Oklahoma State offense that we've grown used to over the last few years under Gundy. They run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
They're like 7th or 8th in the nation running the football.
Look at my note.
Hubbard, he's been, I guess that camera's still
nation's
above my
best.
desk. The camera's still above my desk. He's still grabbing my, no, I'm kidding. But I think they'll try to run the ball with Hubbard. Again, right at Baylor, that's what's worked for them this year. They're not bad passing the football, Okie State, but they're around 60th or so in passing yards per game. A little bit different than what we're used to. The thing that scares me about Oklahoma State, the reason I'm going to pass on this game, they gave up 36 to Texas. They gave up 45 to Texas Tech. Worries me a little bit there. Michigan State, Penn State. Let's head to Happy Valley. It's whiteout time on Saturday night. Or Michigan at Penn State. I knew that I was testing to be passed.
There you go.
Penn State's
I'm always
laying
paying attention.
Penn State's laying 9 here. They're up from 8. Gut check time last week in Iowa City for the Penn State Nittany Lions, and that defense came through.
Yeah. Sorry about the free play last week.
Yeah, we both had them.
We both had them. Sorry about that one, folks.
Yeah, 2-point conversion away from a cover. They didn't get it. Stanley for Iowa, by the way, has not looked too hot the last couple of weeks. That Iowa offense is a little bit pedestrian. This particular game is interesting because you got to win by 10 or more here if you like the favorite. Michigan was lucky to beat Iowa, but a similar game to what we saw between Iowa and Penn State. The problem with the Wolverines, they can't run the ball. They can't pass the ball. They're ranked between 70th and 80th in passing yards per game and in rushing per game. And I think it's going to be tough, man. We found out about James Franklin's defense. They can play some ball. This is going to be a tough spot. I believe the last 3 whiteouts between these two teams at Happy Valley, Penn State's won 2 of them. And again, though, 9. Can you lay 9 against the Wolverines here? Boy, that feels odd, doesn't it? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it feels awfully. Just to say Penn State over Michigan by 9.
Yeah. Well, a couple facts here that I think ring true in this game, and I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. Penn State, who we know that Michigan, when they came up against somebody physical, let me give you an example. Wisconsin had big issues doing anything in that game. Penn State second in the country, allowing 8 points per game, and their 3rd versus a run, and 4th in total defense. Harbaugh, you're going to fail the test again in a big game, in my opinion. 9 might be a little bit much, but it wouldn't surprise me to see a 24-28-10 ball game here, Scott.
I don't disagree. I will say this real quickly about the Michigan offense. Against Iowa, they went without a point for the final 53-plus minutes of game time. So kind of echoing what you're saying, what happened in the Wisconsin game also. They just got smacked between the chops.
One thing we're going to do, actually, that was going to be our marquee matchup, but we're going to edit on the fly. Our marquee matchup in college football this week, Scott and I are going to talk about the Final Four.
Not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. Let's do that. Okay. Let's switch gears to the NFL. Texans and Colts. Scott, the NFL underdogs are 60% on the year.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's unprecedented, but that's unbelievable. And last week, the Texans, as an underdog, got it done against my beloved Kansas City Chiefs, albeit injury list and Mahomes went 100%. But Deshaun Watson, I know you're big on him. The best quarterback in this game. I thought he was the best quarterback in the game last week against Kansas City. And the Colts off a bye. at home. Let's see, they opened up at -2.5 and dropped down to -1 this morning.
Sure.
1.5. We're taping these on Tuesday, folks, so check your lines. Total 48 in this one. And I'll tell you what, this is the first time they've faced them since the Colts KO'd the Texans in wild card round last year, Scott. So a little bit of payback in mind too here.
Yeah, I'll say this much. I mean, I'm a big, as Tony said, a big Deshaun Watson fan.
You should be.
Yeah, he's a great quarterback when he has time to pass. Well, last couple of weeks he's faced a couple of bad defenses, and he has kept his jersey clean. And we've seen what he can do. I know he threw a couple of picks against KC last week, but his completion rate was strong the last 2 weeks. And his touchdown to IT ratio, if you include the game before that, very good for Deshaun Watson. But here's the catch. Here's the rub. The Indianapolis Colts actually have 3 games this season in their 6 they've played where they've, or is it 5 or 6? But anyway, 3 games this season where they've sacked the quarterback 4 times in each of those games. There will be some heat on Deshaun Watson, and after playing, virtual perfect football as far as the game plan was concerned and being carried out by their players, I think this is a tough spot. I really do for the Houston Texans in this one. Listen,
Don't give me up.
Both of these teams went up against. I'm looking here. Both of these teams went up against KC the last couple of weeks, and they faced a Patrick Mahomes who's a little banged up, but they have no running game, KC. So both of these defenses were able to focus on the pass. And I just think this week, as much as I like Deshaun Watson, the jersey doesn't stay clean in the NFL for 3 straight games if your offensive line isn't terrific.
Yeah, and the one note that really has got me, Houston is so good away from home. They're 7-1-1 against the spread their last 9. But I think this one here might be a little trip-up spot for them, Scott. Speaking of tripping up, everybody was expecting the Seattle Seahawks to trip up last week. And they go in, down 2 touchdowns, get the job done against a poorly coached Cleveland Browns team again.
Sure.
I've been saying all season. And now they welcome the Ravens, fresh off a big win against Cincinnati. I don't know if that's saying much. It's like playing Tallahassee JUCO right now. The Seahawks at home laying 3.5, total 50.5, and the totals alert here. The Seattle Seahawks are on an 11-3 overrun their last 14 games, Scott.
Yeah, I look at this game and I'm thinking, if you watch that game, Seattle and Cleveland, you saw Cleveland just give that game away.
Yeah.
So many opportunities to win that football game, gave it away. And then you look at what Seattle's done with Russell Wilson, still one of the best premier quarterbacks in the league. You know what's the difference between Lamar Jackson and a guy like Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson knows when the play's done and over with and he throws the ball out of bounds. Lamar Jackson will throw a pick or he tries to run. Last week, Lamar Jackson carried the football 19 times. It's the NFL, baby. You're not going to last. He's not a 240-pound Ben Roethlisberger-looking type of quarterback. He's not that heavy. He's not a super big guy. Here's what's going to happen. They've got to start dialing that down because it's not all his fault. Harbaugh and his offensive coaches were actually calling some of those plays for him to run the football. And here's another problem with that. They played Cincinnati last week. They scored 3 field goals, 9 points over the final 49 minutes of the game. Hey, I'm happy about that game plan. I did not have a good Sunday, but I cashed with the Bengals. Thank you very much for that game plan.
Yeah.
Then again, in this particular game, boy, I think it's a situation where it's probably going to get over that total. Tony, I'm not sure that's going to be a premium pick, but that's my opinion on the game right now.
I didn't see the, and I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to be quoted here, but the previous 2 weeks before they played the Bengals, they gave up 500 yards each in each of those games here. In Seattle, Russell Wilson, the way he works his magic, my candidate for league MVP right now, almost halfway through the season. I think you're going to see a shootout here.
I was accused of having a man crush on Russell Wilson, so be careful about what I say.
Okay. Well, there you go. Well, I tell you what, I'm excited about that team this year. They find ways to win. And speaking of teams that find ways to win, I don't know if this is me or you, but I'll take it.
Go for it.
Saints at Bears. Obviously, Bears off an embarrassing loss and some added time to think about it in London against the Oakland Raiders, where they just literally ran Jacoby right down their throat.
Yep.
And, of course, the Saints, I say it every week. We talk about it every week. I said, if they go 50-50 without Breeze, maybe go 3-3, they still got a chance to play. Now, Scott, they're 4-0.
That defense is nasty.
That defense is nasty. The Bears' defense is nasty, and they're going to have a chip on their shoulders. This is the lowest total on the board at 38.5 for a reason. Bears at home laying 3. Bears under 9-2 the last 11 since late 2018. The Saints 11-5 on the under as a visiting dog since 2016. Every trend's pointing towards under here. I really don't want anything to do with the side, but that
I'm
under
going
might
to
be
have a
tasty.
side on this. It will be a premium pick for me at DocSports.com.
Oh, there
this
you
week.
go.
We
Well,
release those plays, all of us, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, our
Right.
football plays for the entire weekend. I will have a play on this side. Bears 17-6-1 against the spread, last 24 at home, 7-0-1 when they're at home against teams with a winning record. But don't go so fast. He told you what the New Orleans Saints road record is. How about 22-8 against the spread on the road the last 30? So I just gave you conflicting angles. Guess what? I've got a play on the side. It's a premium pick this week, and that's where we're going to tell you who's going to win this football game.
Hey, he's going to tell me after the video because I don't have a clue in this one other than the under here. That is the 10-10. We have a marquee matchup for you in the NFL. We'll touch on it lightly
More like
here.
a 10-17.
Yeah, 10-17. Eagles taking on Cowboys. Both these teams reeling, Scott.
Yes.
Jason Garrett on the hot seat again, as he should have been the last 5 years. But nonetheless, you want to hear about this game, tune into the marquee matchup. For Scott Spreitzer, I'm Tony George. Thanks for tuning into the 10-10. Go over to Docs and get yourself paid this Sunday.